Hi, it's wonderful for me to be with you today and to share something that's been an important part of my life and the work that I do with people in pastoral counseling. Um, we are such a busy culture, overworked and overcommitted. We are living in a level of stress that is measurable. And of course, that's only increased during these times of COVID, but it was high before and it'll be high after. I think this level of stress that the West is has become used to is probably intensified by some of the demands, perceived demands of Christian ministry and the way that we interpret the Christian life. But all of that to say, I think people in Christian ministry are faced with a lot of challenges uh, regarding the care of their own souls. It makes so much sense for us Christians to be ministering to others and to care for our family, to be responsible in our jobs, uh, at our with church responsibilities. It doesn't make quite as much sense to care for ourselves in terms of our psychological and spiritual well-being. And that's how I want to contextualize the topic that we'll be talking about today. Um, I'm particularly interested in the value of Christian meditation. And meditation is something that um, is often, um, I think, criticized within the Christian community. Um, I think because it's perceived as coming from the East. But those of you that have read in church history regarding spiritual formation know that that's actually not the case. Meditation has been practiced for centuries throughout since the early church, and it's talked about in the Bible multiple times. One of my favorite verses on this score is Psalm 145:5. On the glorious splendor of your majesty and on your wondrous works I will meditate. Christian meditation needs to be distinguished sharply from Eastern meditation in two ways. Most important is it's relational. I think Christian meditation ought to be understood more as a kind of prayer, as a deepened form of prayer. And many people have said that before me. And secondly, uh, Christian meditation is characterized by content, and we're not bashful about the role that biblical content, the beauty of God's character, Christ's work, the blessings that we have as believers, and then just meditating on our daily lives. Just as the psalmist meditated on the creation, we can do all of these things in our meditation, I would suggest. Research over the past 50 years has found repeatedly a moderate, significant effect of meditation on the human soul, regardless of whether it's Eastern or Christian. Lower levels of depression, anxiety, stress, and pain, and improvements in interpersonal relationships, cognitive skills, and positive emotions. And they found no difference between Christian meditation and the majority of research on Eastern and secular forms of meditation. But because Eastern meditation it focuses typically on a mantra or a very, very simple object, if not nothingness itself, uh, I think some Christians have gotten the idea that Christian meditation needs to be similarly simple. And, we see that showing up in centering prayer and the Jesus prayer. I'm not against those forms of prayer. Some people find them to be really helpful, and I want to honor that. However, there's also a great tradition in the Christian tradition of praying on using words and teachings. The issue, I think, what meditation research focuses on or has shown us is that it's not so much the focus and how simple or complex that is, but rather the slowness of the brain and the depth at which we are engaging in this activity. Um, Meditation has been found to be correlated with the mind, with brainwave activity that is slower than normal alert wakefulness, like reading a book, studying the Bible. Meditation is associated with alpha and delta brainwave activity, which is significantly slower than the beta waves that are common in everyday mental activity. So I no longer think of meditation as a discrete activity separate from, distinguishable from prayer and Bible reflection, but rather I see it as a deepened concentration of one's mind, where the brain is moving more slowly and the whole body is actually moving more slowly. It lowers the arousal level of the sympathetic nervous system and is more likely to activate the parasympathetic nervous system, which connects us to persons, including God. And so I see it as something to aim at in every devotion time, ideally, and to see it rather as a slowing down and a deepening. Well, how might we think about this? I would like to um, share a diagram that brings this out, I think, helpfully. As you can see, this column brings out the relative depth of personal Christian spiritual practices here. And so Bible study is where we focus on discourse and can imagine the things that we're reading. However, it tends to be more a mental activity. Same with vocal or mental prayer. And we would expect beta brainwaves to be kind of marking this sort of mostly mental, highly conscious activity. But as we enter into a meditative state, we it's both a brain state and a state of consciousness, activating alpha and actually theta brain waves. Made a mistake there. We experience that in devotional activity that's characterized by a slowness and a deepness. For example, reading the Bible more personally, more with regard to my what it opens up for me in my heart. It's going to be both a mind and a heart activity. And this is called Lectio Divina, as well affective prayer, which we see in the Psalms, where the emotions are engaged, happy emotions in terms of praise or thanksgiving, and then sometimes lament. But either way, it goes into the heart, and it's a slowing down of the mental activity. The psychological activity. And then when we get in most depth, we're going to be engaged with what is called contemplation, if we're reflecting, but doing so at the slowest level. And that would be mostly heart activity. And similarly, contemplative prayer is relational. It's engaging with God, sharing with Him, receiving from Him, and doing so at the deepest levels possible. So that's how I consider the goal of our devotional life. And if we do that, we're going to be, I think, more likely to experience the psychological and spiritual benefits of meditation. And that's what I think is most healing, most a broadening of the soul, enlarging the soul's capacities to be able to deal with stresses and struggles of this fallen world. And I see it, and there's been a lot of research on this in the secular realm, as also a therapeutic technique for those of us like myself who struggle with anxiety and in the past have struggled even with something like personality disorder. And yet this has been a very important part of my recovery, along with seeing therapists off and on over the course of my adulthood. Well, what do we do when we're in devotion time? I think that's focused on entering into a meditative state, meditative prayer state. Well, I think we want to begin with reading a devotional work or reading the Bible, but doing so spiritually and in the heart, and not just trying to be educated by it, as important as that is. Lectio Divina, I think, is the name for that process. And then before we go into meditation, we may want to relax our muscles of going through our body with relaxing different muscle groups, or breathing slowly, deeply from our diaphragm. Both of those practices have been shown to help people usher into a meditative state. And then picking something to focus on. In order to rest in Christ. We could just focus on his beauty and his goodness. I did that this morning. Or pour out our hearts to the Lord in lament, um, opening up to him to receive comfort from him regarding whatever it is that we're going through. Perhaps picturing with our imagination all of our sin and shame in a fresh way, being washed away by the blood of Christ if we're suffering under a sense of shame or guilt. Taking our negative emotions to the Lord, casting them on him, as 1 Peter 5:7 says to do. Or imagining being held in the loving arms of Christ. There's a lot of possibilities for us to focus our attention on. And if you're a Christian meditator, I hope that this way of thinking about it may give you some ideas to explore and experiment with. And if you've not been successful in the past at finding meditation to be a deep help to you, maybe this is a good time in your life journey to try it again, and to try and break through the wall that I think many of us have experienced, where we can't, just doesn't seem to benefit. It's probably a 30 to 90 day, ideally daily practice before we're going to start feeling and experiencing the benefits. But once we do, it becomes very a source of great consolation in our Christian lives, because we get to meet Jesus there. I hope that's been helpful to y'all. Bless you in all that you're doing and in the rest of the conference. It's been a pleasure to share this with you.